So AI's been in the game for me for quite a long time. Those of you that don't know me, unfortunately, I'm most famous for posing as a female on the internet and finding out how bad you guys really are. That was done, 15 years ago now, Ted? Yeah, so I have to follow up on that. So as far as the cybersecurity side, the running joke is Harry Potter got me into cybersecurity. All right, and what's that mean? I was working at Scholastic, and then we got hacked. And since Guy is so old, he'll remember this. We were on NT4 at the time. I know it was college. I'll go, what's that? So we kind of got hacked twice. One little 16-year-old kid, and then we had a little Chinese-American hacker war. That's kind of how I got into this. That's how I started meeting a bunch of you guys, was like 2,600. Then, what was it, 2003 when we did that, Ted? It was me, Stan Guzik, and Peter Stern when we started OWASP over here in New York. And then it just gone on, and then you've pretty much been in every financial place here. Started writing pen test guides on how to do this. That's why when AI came out, or the buzzwords of AI, when people used to call ML AI, that's when I got into this whole thing. And it's been an interesting journey. So MCP, as we brought up, so what is it? All right, so guys that are as old as Guy will think of it as the days of IBM middleware, where it's connecting everything together and trying to make sense of things. All right, it's the latest plug-in there, and so I've been looking into this now for quite some time. So on the AI side, well, ML, we started using it. So I was the evil devil that worked over at a company called Fortify, doing AppSec everywhere, and we used ML flow on the back, all right? And what that started that in 2014. And that's when it started doing all that auto triage stuff, all right? And that's how we were starting to triage vulnerabilities at that particular time. So when ChatGPT came out, I remember that lovely Thanksgiving time back in, was it 2022, when all the madness started. All right, and then what else started happening? All the other hacker madness. And that's kind of where I got into this. So the MCP piece, the reason why I jumped into this one is it's just getting hacked a lot, right? And if you're not paying attention to this all the time, it was last year, 2022, 2023, and 2024, there were only 5 hacks. This year alone, there's been 12. And key thing is, going back when, what's his name brought up that they use it, most of it's open source. How many of you truly test out your open source tools? Nobody wants to admit that. You ever test out VS Code that's in everybody developer's desktop? I could say this now because we're not at Microsoft. Thank you, Checo. There's lots of stuff in that lovely little thing. And most people don't want to hear about it because they don't know an alternative for developers' desktop tools. And that's kind of where this comes in. Other things that I kind of been focusing on, all the tools. All right, how many tools do you deal with that say, okay, we support AI? All right, one of our famous friends there, Mr. Guy, Justin, was bugging me. He's like, oh, you got to see this. I'm like, dude, your site says you're in beta phase of testing Python, so how do you support AI? All right, and that's the other key thing. You were bringing up great points before. What do you know about AI to ask the right questions? Right? It's being thrown in everybody's face, but do you know the right questions to ask? And that's kind of where it comes in. Ted, I know you know, because this is all you do is this stuff. Other things, it's basically the illusion of control. You have this little protocol out there. It's out there. It says, okay, we could do all this now. And when executives here, Microsoft, come in and say, we've got this, and it's hooked into GitHub, and GitHub can do this, and then we could do this. That's what they hear. And then it's forced down on you saying, okay, we have to do this. How many of you remember when you were forced to use GitHub Copilot? 1? Wow, that's scary. All right. What was the end game on that? You're using it, it fixes a critical, creates 2 new highs, and then creates a lot of latency, correct? All right, and this is the reality of what we're at. Everything's being forced on us, but it's never tested. Right? So it's the illusion of control. And me coming from the red team side of the house, where are you from? What side of the house? You dirty side, you forensics, what?
I'm on the purple, in between red and blue.
Why would you do that?
Just to be difficult for you.
The best defense is a strong offense. Special teams, okay, good call. All right, and that's kind of where it comes in. It's like, always a red teamer, so I'm always looking at everything else. Now, what do you think my new target is? Every developer out there. So everybody's looking, how do I do a phishing? My target is now every developer, all right? And then you do what's called a pattern of life. So then you add intelligence into it, and you start to look, okay, when does this person commit, all right? You want to scare the executives. What I did last year, I took a different route. So big into deep fakes. Everybody who knows me knows that. I proved to them I could use deep fakes to put a CEO in a hostile situation, all right? Once I did that, how many executives do you think started listening? Pretty much all of them. Because what we did was we compromised the principal's voice and put it to his head of protection, and then the head of protection to the driver, literally spoofing calls with different voices, and we rerouted them to him in a bad area. You think that had an impact? You think that made him want to rethink everything with AI? Pretty much so. And that's where that illusion comes in. Now we have the pipelines, okay? And I'm sure you've experienced this. As you're spinning up your own models, you have all these new tests you have to do, all right? And everyone's like, well, I don't have to do the normal AppSec anymore. I only have to do this. Or all the new tools out there. Now, when we get into what these breaches are, we're going to start to see, okay, we have to do both now. So the cost has just gone drastically up. Now, the lovely image I have here, what do you think all of those are? Besides being old, they're still actively in code. So that screenshot was put in there yesterday. All right, so that should tell you, what do you think? Why do you think they're all different rankings? Why would that be important? Your normal policy is only look at criticals and highs, different timelines as to when to remediate. But what do you think they all have in common? They're all known exploitable vulnerabilities that have already been used. So if that's not part of your policy, then it's like, all right, so then what's our policy supposed to be, all right? The interesting part is go out and look at all those lovely tools that support AI. How many support Go? How many support C++? Okay, and this is the lovely area that we're dealing with from the cybersecurity perspective. All right, you go out to the MCPs, it's not the core that's there, but it's the transient dependencies that are. Like for instance, you look at TensorFlow, right? Lovely tool with that one. I could pull that up right now and you'll be shocked how many are in there. All right, and then when we get into the breaches, you're gonna look and see, wow, it's a remote code execution that compromised the MCP server that then compromised the whole business. And that's kind of the direction where we're going. Any questions at this point? No? Yes, Ted.
You're saying these are vulnerabilities on the host client.
Sorry.
I'll make it even more fun. It's LangChain. All right? What's LangChain do? LangChain turns into pretty much all the AI agents. And then what's the MCP controlling all the agents?
So this is the orchestrator.
Pretty much.
That has these vulnerabilities.
Now, the funnier part is when you start just looking at the orchestration layer, what do you think most of the orchestration layers are pretty much coded in? It's not Python.
Is it?
No.
Sorry, not Jesus. You tell me.
So Dart, Flutter, which are basically low code, no code, and Java. Now go look at all your AI tools. Tell me which ones support those languages. Right. So basically when we went back previously about that blind trust and the illusion, that's kind of where we are. But we're putting it out more and more every day. Now, when you were talking about running digital, you're running antivirus and all that stuff, guess what? How many of you have used Anthropic? All right, small handful. What do you use it for? So here's the fun. You want to go have fun? Take all those known exploitable vulnerabilities that you see here from CISA that are in there. Now rewrite the exploits for it in LangChain. I mean, with Anthropic, basically Claude code. Rewrite it and see if any of the things detect it. They don't. So you're not going to know if you're breached because there's no signature.
Right?
What?
It doesn't have the knowledge to check it.
Doesn't have a signature associated with anything. Now, if you really want to get the deep down dirty, why did I say I target the developers? How many of you here work Intel? Also, none of you? Now stop and think. If I'm going to impersonate someone, I impersonate a developer, I have a pattern of life built up on when they do their commits and everything else. I can now put backdoors in the code as that developer because I've trained Anthropic to think like the developer, write like that developer, and then I can go do these lovely exploits that way. And then it's basically, how do you prove it? Because literally what I did, I trained it, I compromised your machine because you clicked on that old school link, and now I committed it as you. So when we look at all the core attack surfaces in MCP, all right, it's all the basics. I mean, to me, the reason why I brought up the OWASP thing before is where we are with AI is where I feel like we were with OWASP back in 2003, 2004. Ted, you'll have these slides, don't worry. And what are we doing now? I know OWASP jumped on the train. They got all the top 10 for all the LLMs, trying to do something good. And that's kind of where we're stuck. Want to ask something, Guy? Oh, you keep going like this? I don't know. And now where it really gets complex is how many of you have done, how many of you have had to go in and do governance frameworks for a global organization? Any of you? That's where it gets really complex because now you have to deal with adversary countries, all right? So this can work in the US, but this can't work in our companies in China. China, we have to use DeepSeek where we can't block it in the US, right? And that's when it gets complex. And you have the tools that you can use in the US, but you can't use in those adversary countries because they'll violate what's called ITAR, right? Because some of these tools would be considered a weapon of war. All right, so when you get back into the MCP vulnerabilities, unvalidated context injection, stuff he had brought up before, right? Those SQL type injections and all of that, the prompt injections. Any of you ever look at how expensive those prompt injection tools are? Got a price from Google, I think, at one customer. It was like $400,000 a month. So, yeah, they're not cheap. All right, and proper plugin isolation. Where do we see this happen now? How many browser plugins are out there hooked into some AI platform? All right, what have we seen happen with OpenAI? How many of you use ChatGPT? Come on, it should be everybody here. All right, now did you see how they caught the guy from the California wildfires with all the stuff in ChatGPT? Do you know how they did that? So when you generate an image in ChatGPT, it doesn't come out normal. So if I uploaded a picture I took of me and Ted, right? iPhone, it's going to come out IMG1111. Once you upload it to modify it in ChatGPT, it comes out with its own code. So if you look at it in what's called EXIF data, it's going to look like a hash value that you could then do the trace on it. So when you have to go do your investigations. So I literally give it, probably with the next 3 to 6 months, you're going to have a whole investigative class of doing all the intel collection from stuff from ChatGPT. Have any of you dug into all the watermarks that they put in there? No? So when you're writing code, and I believe this is so going back to what they were talking before, it's not garbage in, garbage out, because we all know the BS that goes out of ChatGPT. So they put their own watermarks, and you necessarily don't see it when you do it through the browser. When you do it through the phone, you're going to see them. When you're looking at the code, you're going to see little pictures drawn within the text. It'll be like pretty much seen in the black and white. If you have a black screen with white text, you'll see it. And what they'll do is when you copy and paste that into, say, VS Code, you'll start to see all the little hidden code marks. And my assumption on the purpose for that is so they're not ingesting garbage in from all the stuff that's out there. Now, when you were bringing up the RAGs before, all the hallucinations, there's a company I've dealt with on the DoD side. It's a company called Data2. They have a RAG literally focused on the hallucinations. It's supposed to bring it down to like 95% good. So people are coming out with that. It's just knowing where to look. My other concern is, what was it, this week it came out? OpenAI with their browser. So what's it ingesting then from you, what you're looking for, all right? My wife, it would be her latest, what she wants from Louis Vuitton or Chloe or whatever. All right, so then it builds up shopping habits. You know, other guys, it'll be whatever research they're doing on OpenAI's competitor. All right? Me personally, how many of you use any of the plugins in there? Any of you? Do you hook it into, say, Google Drive or SharePoint or Notion or anything else like that? No? The dirty game on that is when you start hooking it to drives with all your other information, it also gets indexed all the time. All right, so if you're going to do it, have a clean drive specific for that, because then it starts spitting out data that it's connected already. Notion, the reason why I brought them, they had a bad filter going on with their MCP, and it was pushing data out that it shouldn't have. So these are the key things you always have to test. Now, here's the real question. Who does the POCs on this stuff? Who knows this well enough to where you're doing a proof of concept if this is right for the business? Most people I know don't have a say in what they're using. All right, the memory retention exposure, you know, that's something we see all the time. All right, if you ever put any personal data in there, it'll always come back at any given time. And then across agent prompt injections. All right, how long have we seen that? That's, like I said, going back to the OWASP days. Now, how these exploits work, it's basically we have our old-fashioned way, recon, you know, injection, escalation, and infiltration. All right, exfiltration. All right, this is stuff we've done forever. Now, if you really want to get interesting, you start playing around with an OpenAI model, and then it'll start feeding you back all the packages that it's currently made of. All right, so as a lovely game, I took all of that data, I hooked it into my builds time, and I started pulling all the vulnerabilities and all the packages and all the versions. Now, how can that be helpful? All right. Then the other thing we always have is what are our defense layers? All right, so we have our gateways. Now, if you want to have fun with the gateways, go test them because most of them are open source. And how many vulnerabilities are in those gateways? All right, the same thing with the prompt router. When we come up and start looking at the exploits, you'll see where that's been compromised. And where else are there always problems? Always in the RBAC solutions. All right, can we do privilege escalations? You know, what's that person's credentials? Do you still have access to it after you left the company? All the old stuff. All right, other unauthorized tool access. All right, so this is where we're taking all the different LLMs, we're doing different MCPs. How many of you played with like N8N or Zapier or anything like that? Doing all the hook-ins from there? No one? Our AV guy's the only one doing it. So are you also, I'm confused, but then again, I remember seeing him at Hope all the time as well.
I was doing it, but then I put Cloudflare on my, and I couldn't get Zapier to get past Cloudflare, so I gave up on Zapier.
That's because Cloudflare, there's controls in it. So if you run Cloudflare, they started it so you can lock out specific AI tools. Go in and look at it, and then they'll have configuration to fix that.
And so I asked ChatGPT to fix it for me, and it couldn't. I gave up.
So go ask Grok.
Okay.
He's like, I like Elon. I'm not going to use Grok.
I figured out some other workaround that didn't involve Zapier at all, and I stopped using Zapier. That was my solution.
Yeah, other people that weren't using that would go over to N8N and then run N8N locally. So that's another workaround you can have. All right, then we go through our old school stuff, APIs. All right, how long have we been working on securing APIs? At least a decade now. Now, you know what's funny? Nobody brought up to me, but I only picked up on this last week. We're doing all this AI. How many of you use phone apps for your AI? Have you ever have you ever reverse engineered the phone apps? I literally reverse engineered one and got 40 secrets with 40 different apps. I mean, we got it into Splunk because they were storing data in Splunk. We got it into, I can't say their name because they're a customer, a certain financial customers, all right, with API keys and all of that other stuff. So always test the mobile apps as well, right? Reverse engineering, you can literally, the lightweight version, you could run mobsf on a local Docker container and just tear it apart and take a look. You'll probably be shocked. Then our supply chain is always all the third-party plugins that we have. All right, basically from a plugin perspective, we're looking at what open source tools we're using. All right, me personally, I think I've showed Ted and I think I've showed Guy. I've tested 500 open source AI apps, and it's just trying to determine which one's a bigger foobar. I'll leave it at that. All right, because how bad is the code? What's it look like? What's the performance look like? How many vulnerabilities and exploits are in it? And that's kind of the rabbit hole I go into. As soon as I hear of a new breach that's happened, I'm literally out there looking for whose passwords are exposed, who's done this, that, and the other thing. Yeah.
In looking for the source of these AI apps, did you find that there's a lot of overlap and commonalities, developers poaching on other developers' code?
I haven't done that. It's just the third-party packages that they're all using. Like LangChain is bad. TensorFlow is real bad. And that's just the chain, but you're kind of forced to use them. The truly worst one was, so Pandas was bad, which you're pretty much using for all the data. And then Pillow. Pillow has all of them that are used Pillow literally have a 10 out of 10 remotely executable exploit that hasn't been patched since 2014. So that's where it's at. And if you want to see it, afterwards I'll show you. All right, then we have manipulation and persistence. All right, what's the MCP connecting to, and what conversations, all of that. Like you were talking about, all the different logs that we have, this, that, or the other thing, memory exploits, stuff like that. But also what's not logged. All right, so when we get into things, whatever's not logged that we have no vision of. All right, so I always looked at this when we find exploits in cars, guess what? There's no real logging for it. I think there's one tool out there for that. Same thing with AI. I mean, what we actually see is minimal. The only thing that's been helpful for me, any of you read the attack patterns that have been used for OpenAI and Anthropic? Anthropic publishes them quarterly. OpenAI publishes them monthly, what our adversaries are doing. Anyone? Well, I'm going to have a lot of follow-up. You're the only one. This is why you don't sleep. All right, so it's always a good way of learning. Well, what are they doing? What am I doing? This way you can learn from bad habits that we all have. Now, here's the real world stuff. All right, so this particular one right there, as soon as you open it up, as we were just talking about, there you go. There's Pillow, the first one. All right. Now, when we start looking at the compromises, this is 2023, 2024. All right, so we had a LangChain sandbox bypass compromise. All right, And all of these were reported. So it's not like it's, oh, I found a vulnerability, but nobody's really exploited. These were all out there. All right, GitHub Copilot, plugin injections. There's your example on the plugins. Now, guess what the problem with GitHub is? It doesn't support half the languages that AI is written in. Which languages no tool out there support? What? No, there's 2 out there that support Rust. So I think SemGrep and Fortify. All right, they don't support Jupyter Notebook. I think, oops, no tool testing that. All right, guess what else nobody's really testing? The .md files. As everybody's doing all their documents, well, what do we leave that's vulnerable and exploitable in just the markdown files? All right, why do I ask this question? You look at the MD files, who generates them both? You have OpenAI and then you have Grok, because that's how they want you to take your data to feedback so you can kind of replicate the outcome you had before, right? AI agent exploit, agent hub exploit. I mean, if you ever want to sit and walk through this, it's sad because everybody's being told, here, buy this tool. And I'm not going to mention a 4-letter tool name that was influenced by 2 banks. But yeah, they missed a lot. Now, 2025, what have we seen so far? Right now, we only have 5 to keep it congruent, but 4, we've actually had 12 exploits so far this year that have gone and compromised data. And as you see this year, what's the difference? They're all in the big AI vendor names. So we have stuff that's happened with Anthropic. We've had stuff that happened with AWS, Figma. How many of you use Figma? Nobody? Jeez. Now, when you stuck drawing out attack maps and all that stuff, it's phenomenal. All right, so just think of that. Malicious NPM packages, remember that? Yeah, all the PyPy stuff, all with backdoors in it. I think there was, if I'm not mistaken, was about 180 of them? Yeah, 180 of them, and I think 40 of them hit CrowdStrike. So that's the other thing is nobody checks for backdoors in code, all right? I think the only one that checks for it with previous ones is SemGrep and Endor Labs. So that's the other one we have, the other big problems we have in this game. So who puts a backdoor in the code, and how do you trigger that backdoor? Then there's always the human element. Everybody hates hearing this. It's not the human's fault. Well, humans are like code. They can be manipulated. All right, it's pretty much that simple. All right, they say the weakest link is in MCP. Well, why is that? Why is humans the weakest link? And it's not because of social engineering. Who writes the code? So the lovely thing, so I run this thing called the Cyber Breakfast Club. And she's not speaking this time, but she would have been great to have here, Michelle. From the legal point, all the different conversations that come up with AI and code. So if you have AI write your code, can you use it for IP? Would it be your IP? All the different scenarios for that. And then the reason why that's important is, guess what? Who do we blame? Okay, what's the biggest problem we have in every corporation? When we're building out all of this stuff, nobody wants to take ownership, right? Ownership is probably the biggest difficulty that we deal with. Who wrote this? Who wrote this? Who did this? I think what the senior management needs to learn to start off with praising them and then ask, oh, who owns this? Because for the praise, they'll raise their hand, all right? And then you come out with, oh, this did this wrong, all right? Just social engineering at its best, all right? What else do we have? Hacking skills, all right? The other thing I think that's become a huge problem in this world is when they started commoditizing hacking, all right? They commoditized it so people are not always going out hiring the best person for the particular job, all right? You start getting into the AI stuff, all the AI red teaming and all the testing and all of that. Who do you know that does that? Have they brought teaching this up at any universities? I haven't seen it. My biggest problem is I sit on the advisory board for a university, and guess what? You know how long it takes to get something passed through the red tape? 3 years. All right, and that's always been a difficulty. I think for just to have law taught in cybersecurity, it took 3 years. All right, then we have the invisible threat inside. All right, we have all the different shadow AIs in the company. We were worrying about shadow tech before. Now we have the same problem with shadow AI. And why do we have it? Pretty much make our jobs easier, right? It's pretty much the whole purpose. Now, you know what it's great for? You know what the most dangerous job in New York City is right now? The guy in Times Square who's taking your picture. Why would he be the most dangerous guy? You have no rights to your picture. They own it. They took it. So guess what? He can go make all the deep fakes of you he wants. He owns the picture. All right? Now, how do I know this? All right, so when I did that thing called the Robin Sage experiment back in 2010, all right, you can look that one up. It was basically using social media for exploitation. The downside of why I don't talk about a lot of what I do is, guess what? Ever since I did that talk, you go look at the MITRE ATT&CK framework, all of that. It's the number one way that they've been exploiting everybody for 15 years. All right, it all starts off with a social engineer. Now they're building entire companies full of deepfake AI people that'll go call you, get all your information. They've gone as far as using some face swap apps. So if they get on a Zoom call with you, it's not really them. All right, guess what? They also have a hook in. You could do the same thing with FaceTime. All right, and this is where we're kind of at with this whole world with AI, and it's changed so fast. How fast did deepfakes pop out? Once 11 Labs came out, I mean, they're perfect with voices now, all right, in real time. And anybody can do it. That's the tricky part. And there's, with every tool that's built, there's people that use it for good, people that use it for evil, right? It all comes down to the mindset. Who am I using it for? I mean, this will make you laugh. So I got pulled into some divorce cases where deepfakes were used for making fake videos of the wife, fake this, that, and the other thing, and trying to pass it off as evidence. But then it just comes down to the old schools. All right, so when you start looking at all the shadow AI and stuff, you know, where are you putting your data? All right, now guess what? Everyone's always wondered, how many of you use your phone and say, wow, I just talked about something 2 seconds ago and it pops up on my phone? All right, all the time, right? Does it have anything to do with Facebook opening WhatsApp and all of us use WhatsApp and it chooses a phone and video and listens to everything we say? Possibly. Now, guess what else it does? All right, because I've noticed this. I'll have private messages on Signal, and then it'll still pick it up. It's like I'll say, oh, I'm going to talk to Ted, and then a picture of Ted pops up on my phone. Now Ted's freaking out because Ted's OPSEC is strong. But that's kind of the reality of the world that we deal with. So what makes you think that when we're talking, because we have open AI on our phone, and we talk all the time, all that data is not taken in for that to learn from? All right? Now, when is AI a weapon? All right, that's the base one is psychological warfare. All right, so from a warfare perspective, where have we seen this before? Where was the first place we started seeing deepfakes from a warfare perspective? How about Israel? Okay, once that came out, they already had all the fake gen images. So that's when you had to start looking for the pictures of people with 6 fingers. All right, that was the first case. But you know what nobody ever talks about, which is, I feel, a little bit more dangerous? The impact of war on tech. All right, because where are these developers sit? All right, so when I looked at it, when you go and look at the Russian-Ukraine war, how many of us worked for companies that had stuff outsourced to those 2 countries? All right, now guess what that cost on the back end? I think it cost about $6.8 million to relocate the 2 teams we had from there. All right, because we couldn't have them operating. I think we moved them to the Czech Republic and Poland. All right, and why? Because they're strong labor that's cost effective. All right, so that's one impact. What's the other impact? All the data that's left behind. All right, and these are the things we never ask. All right, now think of it. How many of you have computers that back everything up into the cloud? Nobody will admit to that. Wow.
Everyone.
Everyone. All right, what, Oracle? Oh, I thought you said Oracle because of their breaches. You saw who the victim was today? EY. So that's the other thing. When we share data and we're out there, we had, was it 30 breaches that stem from Salesforce? And now all the Oracle ones are starting to pop up. I think they're up to about 10. So when you're storing all this data, and that's why everybody always goofed around, all right, what's the cloud? Somebody else's computer. Now we're getting that reality check. Well, where's AI? It's in the cloud, all right? So he was on point before when we were talking about that. And it's like, all right, it's there. And all that's going to happen using AI is my cloud bills are going to go through the roof. So, executive decision loops. All right. So where's this go? All right. This has been, I think, the one AI project I'm currently working on is probably the most interesting. All right. So it's with the series. It's a pre-Series A startup. And guess what its focus is using AI? Saving money. Because what it does an asset management because we don't know anything that's going on there. And then it maps it to all your contracts. Am I overpaying here? Am I overpaying here? How can I use this in a negotiation strategy? All right, every other one wants you to spend a fortune, so that's probably the most interesting one. Now, the other loops are everyone says, you know, I can make you work 10 times faster. All right, remember what happened with Facebook? I think it improved their performance by 4% in just like 2 weeks ago. And Zuckerberg's like, I want it to be 10x. All right? Now, guess what? If we're not training it anymore, what's it going to learn? It's going to repeat itself, learning all the good and bad that every other one learned before. All right? That's why at some point you have, how many of you use ChatGPT to write your LinkedIn profile? Nobody wants to admit to it. Oh, okay, Matt will admit to it. All right. I do too. Okay? That's kind of the reality of it. So when it starts reading it and everything else, it's like kind of bad. Have you ever asked ChatGPT what its sources of truth are? No? You know what the most scariest one I found? Wikipedia. All right? So I was just talking about this. I think it was with you, Ted. What happens when the hackers start using Wikipedia as an attack platform? Meaning, as it scans Wikipedia, I start having hard links to compromised code. Well, how do we compromise code in OpenAI? Well, we put it in a Word document, and we highlight the exploit code in white so it looks like white paper, but when a machine reads it, it does something totally different. All right? Where else has this been used, this trick? Where's Adriana? She'll know. She's not here. Your email signatures? Oh, the man who I can't reply to on LinkedIn because he has all replies blocked? So you could start prompt injecting your resume if you didn't know that on why to hire you. All right, so I've actually done some deep research on this one. So there's two different phases that you have to go through in the new AI world. One, passing the resume check. Two, is now they have you in an interview where they're recording you, and then it's doing a translation. It's doing a voice-to-text translation, which most of them are bad at, and then trying to do a semantic analysis to profile your personality. So how many times do you think AI has probably gone wrong on hiring the right people? Any of you experienced that?
99.9% of the time. Any worse than a human?
It depends on the human. Okay, it depends on the human. All right, where else have we seen this gone wrong? Where has AI gone wrong? The people that manage the AI in the doctor's office. Have you noticed doctor's office experiences have gotten worse? So there could be some reasons right there. All right, just remember the MCP is there because it's not like you're going to do an mmap scan and find it. You have to do a couple other things to find it. But guess what? It's sitting there controlling everything. So if that gets compromised, everything's compromised. And you'll never know. So back to the red teaming game, my fun part. I knew I should have brought a water. So we have our internal MCP red teams. Okay, what are those red team guys doing? All right, so they're testing out all the different plays. How's the model set up? What are they going to do? You know, are they testing the exploits for plugins? Do they have browser plugins? Do they have plugins that are pulling out corporate data? So if they're pulling out corporate data, can you do a prompt injection to pull that data out? All right, these are all the various things. So where do you think would be the scariest place that they have this? Oh, thank you. Where do you think the scariest department would be to have this? HR, maybe? What's in HR? Pretty much all your PII. All right, so they're going to have your access to your medical stuff. They're going to have access to your socials. They'll have access to this, that, and the other thing. How many of you ask your AI to give you the sources of where it pulled everything from? Anyone? Matt, you're a given, okay? You and Ted are always a given, and so is Checo. All right? So next time you do that, say, ask it to provide sources, links to, and then you manipulate it and you ask it to do it so that you can verify if it's hallucinating. You want me to tell you another simple trick? So what should be your first sentence when you write a prompt in any OpenAI platform? All right, you want to see you get better results? Literally act as a prompt engineering expert, and then you put your prompt right underneath that. You add that one line, it's going to write the prompt the proper way of writing it out. It's supposed to be written with all the added features. And then you're going to get a whole different world of results. Right? You could try that on Anthropic. You could try it on OpenAI. You could try it on Grok, whatever. Just if you're using it for context and research, simplest little trick. All right, other thing is, how do you make decision manipulations? So there was a little argument before. I'll get a little controversial because I don't care. It was on the drama around Tylenol. Everyone remember that? Okay. So this is where the truth actually came out. So you ask it to provide all the sources and links. And then everything became a little bit more clear. So how many of you are sick of listening to all news channels the past 4 years? All of us, right? Wow, the first time I got everybody to raise their hand. All right, so when you ask it, and then you ask it where the research was done. All right, so the Tylenol research, if you dug into it deeply, they used 2 different chemicals. And the one that certain news channels would report were European research stations on Tylenol that were funded by that local government. So I forget what it was called. In Europe, they use something different than the acetaminophen. It starts with a P. Yes. What are you, your own ChatGPT? But that's the whole thing. And that's why I always look at it like, I'm so sick of them manipulating the truth. Let me do a couple of queries and find out what the source of truth really is. All right. And then where did those reports come from? All right. So that's one way. So the manipulation stuff, that's the 2 things that bug me about OpenAI, and I will truly say I'm not the biggest fan of having them as the front face for AI and for this country. But yeah. Then we have the governance game. All right, I'll call it the Mirage. Yes, I know, Ted, you're going to freaking take a picture of this one too. All right, so when you look at it, is what testing was missed. All right, so then this goes back to my whole company mantra: your mindset determines your outcome. All right, so it's how much do you know, who's the best person on your team, are you doing it alone, do you pick different people because they think differently, and then correlate all that data together. All right, so I was doing this one for a big one, and it wasn't until later I realized, dude, I'm glad I didn't get that project because I royally foobarred this one. All right? And it's because I didn't go deep enough in one angle. All right? So we had 3 people there. It was a female friend of mine, somebody from financial, and myself. And we're like, all right, how do we perfect this? And the problem is we were too technical. All right? So we weren't taking the business angle in it. right? So when we're building out a governance model, what are some of the things we forgot? Geopolitical context, which is huge, right? So then you have to have that type of context. You have to have these types of tests done here, these types of tests here. We have all these different models, right? And this is what it really comes down to. So when the governance comes, then what else comes? What are the proper tools? All right. Unfortunately, we were stuck with one tool on the AppSec side. I knew was going to miss everything. All right. And that's because when I do my tests, I literally, the 500 tests I've done, I've tested on every application security platform. So I can literally tell you what's going to find what's going to find this, what custom rules you're going to have to write to find that. And that's kind of the dirty game here, right? Because what you miss, then guess who's getting all the blame? Because that CISO is going to go with the governance model to go up to the board, and then shit rolls downhill. All right, so those are the different scenarios you have to think of. All right, so what will be missed? Now, let's start looking at our threat matrix. All right, so we have attack type versus mitigation strategies. All right, so context injections, we're going to adversarial payloads. Well, what's an adversarial payload look like? Most people don't know. All right, what causes model drift? What causes this type of hack? What does this? How can I find out the exploits in it? If I have an application exploit, can I dig deep into the model to actually exploit it and have it be like something that would be similar to like a cross-site scripting where it's dumping out data? Or a SQL injection on the screen, and then you copy that and then whatever. All right, we've seen that happen where when it's accessing certain databases, the databases will dump all the employee data. Now, who made the news for that? Anyone remember? And it was their HR system. Do you know, Guy? McDonald's. McDonald's. All right, so look up the McDonald's AI breach. Okay, it literally happened from all the HR data. Now the thing that, yes. Oh, okay, sorry. So what else do you think happened? So who do we submit our resumes to? HR. So do you think there was a PII leak? Yeah, and this wasn't for a high-tech cybersecurity job. This was for McDonald's. All right. Unfortunately, nowadays in cybersecurity, some places try and pay McDonald's wages. All right. Then we have all the different plugin abuses. All right. So where do we see the plugin abuse? Maybe in VS Code could be one place. Maybe in your browser could be another place. And what's it trying to do? All right. It's trying to get what you're doing and what you're doing, and maybe share it with other people or feed that data into another model. Okay. Now, where are some places where we can ask questions about model change? All right, we're all starting to experience that one. How many of you got a new iPhone? How's that model change working? What happened when they had OpenAI embedded into iPhones before? Anyone remember? My favorite one is now how spell check stopped working. And I was typing words correctly, and then it would autocorrect them to be wrong. Everyone remember that? Yeah. Your wife complained about it? Yeah, so you won't admit to an Apple either, huh? You're on the Android, the most exploitable phone out there. Yeah. Then we have the memory persistence. Okay. Now, where has that gone wrong for us when we're writing up documents? All right. So how many times have you done something wrong, you've gone to clear it up, and then all the bad data comes back up in the report? Come on, this Big Four made the news for it. All right, so I'll leave it at that. All right, and that's the reality, because sometimes, now the dangerous side of this, all right, I'm not going to tell you how to do it, and I think I showed you, Ted. Whatever you do when you're posting pictures to social media now, do not post publicly facing pictures. AKA, we did this as a joke, and it scared the hell out of me, because I think Instagram turned into OnlyFans. It's my personal feeling. All right, so I said, all right, let's do this as a test based on all the old Robin Sage stuff because I'm doing a new version now. So I did a screenshot of just her picture by her window. You want to know what the problem was? It gave me the building she lived in, the floor she lived in, right there in Hudson Yards. All right? Now, why wouldn't I release all that stuff? Because from my old learning lessons, you've released that, then you have the bad people that do bad things. So it's a little word of advice. Don't post stuff. Like, don't post a picture in front of you with a cross street either, if it's close by your house. All right? Because that's how good it is. Because you're doing a combination of OSINT and IMINT, and it'll pick up everything. All right? Any of you ever use Face ID check? Or you don't know what it is? Dirty thing.
Why don't you tell us?
So it was this lovely tool I used, and I goofed around about it. I took a picture of the wife, I uploaded it, and I said, "Hun, I found a picture of you with a black man." And she's like, "What?" And it was a joke because I knew what she did. So I showed her the picture. It was a 2008 Huffington Post article of her working on 50 Cent's teeth at the dentist's office because he did an article on him getting his new teeth done. All right, so when you're doing OSINT and you're finding old stuff, this is the stuff that scares you. And then you wonder who owns it because the only way to pay for that tool is with Bitcoin. So you figure it out. And that's the situational awareness of it. What? She laughed because she's like, it's in Huffington Post. Go look in 2008. But that's the problem. I had to do an investigation for a missing person, and I had to use that to find out other sites that they were on. So there's a good and a bad thing to it. That's kind of how you have to do it. And with that, anybody have any questions? You need a robot for that. Next conference, you should just get a, yes.
What's the positive from all this?
What's the positive? If you're in offensive security, you'll have a job for a while. Yes.
It's a bit secondary to what you've been talking about. But doesn't this kind of really amp up the identification problem, like people taking jobs, being developers, that they're saying they're someone and they're not really, and that's, sort of part of the, I guess, the human part.
So have you seen the cases on that? So Microsoft had a big blunder. I think it was a $400 million mess up. They invested in a company called Builder AI. You remember that one, Matt? They put $400 million into this one. And then they found it was a bunch of offshore developers. There was no AI involved, that they were building out all the code. All right, so there's one scenario. The other scenario is everybody who commits their code to GitHub, don't forget, Microsoft has one of the biggest AI platforms out there, so they are learning from you, your good and bad habits. All right? There's a whole bunch of good and positive points, but the key thing is I'm not talking to the executives all the time, but who is? All right? Like when I did the Robin Sage thing, 28 different universities taught their own version of it. What was the problem? Not one of them asked me for the slides. But yet they were out there saying, oh, well, this. So it's all hypothetical until you can prove something. All right? That's why I did the whole thing on the executive protection side. If you scare the hell out of them, then that's usually their big wake-up call. And that's why I brought up ownership. Well, who brought in this AI platform? Well, if it's for HR, who did the proof of concept for it? Did they have IT and security come in and do that proof of concept? Because you know what it takes to train an AI platform, and this is the disturbing part for HR, to review you during a resume? It only takes 20 test cases according to the tools. Do you think there's more than 20 different personalities? I mean, I know the Myers-Briggs has what, 16? But you're going to tell me those 16 picked that person out perfectly? No.
Yeah,
Anyone
it
else?
seems like it's creating a lot of mistrust.
It is. But
Recruiters,
who creates it? That's
clients,
the question.
yeah.
Who creates it? The question is who's created it. So who's making all the money on it?
Well, the other problem is that application tracking system is broken completely because I'm sure anyone looking for a job in here, and I know personally, I work with a bunch of CISOs that are looking, very, great individuals, and they're sending out literally 1,000, 1,500 resumes and not getting one response back. Something's broken, and how would you fix that with
I kind
AI?
of like the new title, Chow. You know what I mean? The chief AI officer now. What? Chow, that's the new job, Chow. It sounds like I just took a trip to Italy.
You're bad.
All right. Anyone else?
Anyone else? One more?
One more.
All right. I got to come up all
What?
the way. I'm running.
Just quick, you mentioned watermarks copying into VS Code in the actual lines of code, sort of subtle.
Right. So what you'll do is you'll have ChatGPT write you out a long piece and look at it on your phone, and then you're going to start to see a watermark that looks like a person or whatever, or some waves or something like that. You copy and paste that same text into VS Code, and then you're going to see how it does its watermarks. Now, technically, if you wanted to scrub that out, and you're using like N8N for part of your orchestration, two things you would have to do. If you're doing images, you'd have to do an EXIF scrub on the images, okay? Because then it gets all that data out. Then if it's going through the text, you just have it converted to regular text.
Okay, last question, please.
Yes, I don't know how familiar you are with the whole digital ID thing going on in Europe. But do you think with all this AI, deepfake stuff going on around the world, that might be a reality in America?
Yeah. I mean, no offense, but our president puts out enough deep fakes. But where this is done is you'll see a lot of humor on it, on a bunch of them. But then here's the real thing, and this comes back to having your media team. So what you would have to do is build a source database of everything that person's actually said. Meaning, okay, here's every public video of them. All right? And then you can match it to something new that's pointed out, and then kind of map it to say, okay, this is what's changed. And it literally comes down to real people calling it out first. It's a hard thing to do, but you also have to look at all the EXIF data, because the EXIF data sometimes will show you changes as to, like, say, if they used Adobe to change it, the EXIF data will be in there and say, well, they used Adobe for this. All right, but then if they're crafty, they'll put it in an N8 pipeline and do all the scrubbing before it's published.
Well, thank you, sir.
Oh, nice.